Let's start with Simon this afternoon, and we'll kick off with the events in Singapore. Yesterday, I spoke to Richard Marles early in the piece. He said he was introduced to his Chinese counterpart. It was pretty clear at that point that this is where it was heading. They had a 1-hour conversation and being described at least as a good start, Simon.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the reality is, Kieran, is you'd much rather be having jaw than war with China. If we can find an accommodation that protects and defends our national interest, exactly as Richard Marles says Australia very firmly intends to do, the fact that we're back talking with the Chinese again after a 2-year absence can only be a good thing. Now, how quickly we break the impasse, how quickly that leads into something substantive, particularly on the trade front, where obviously a number of our sectors have been unfairly punished by the Chinese, we'll have to see. And it'll be fascinating to see, for example, whether the Chinese agree to meet with the new Trade Minister Don Farrell over in Europe as part of the discussions that are taking place over there. But a good start in the sense that seems to have been the imperative has come from the Chinese side to re-talk. Australia's obviously, under the previous government and the current government, made it very clear that we were happy to have a sensible conversation. Let's hope that's what we've seen the first steps towards.
Kerrychukarovsky, what's your read on this? As Simon says, we are awaiting the trade news, whether or not there's some progress on that front. But Don Farrell currently in Geneva, so hopefully we might see a step forward on that front shortly as well too.
Oh, and I think everybody who's involved in business in Australia would be grateful if we started those conversations again. I think the new government has the advantage that they come to it as cleanskins. You know, they're not carrying the baggage of being the government that held the Chinese government to task over what happened and how did we end up with the COVID pandemic. You know, they've come to this being able to say, look, we've gone through these couple of years. It's time to move on. We need to look at our joint mutual interests and how we can actually progress discussions which are to the benefit of both countries. Although I did note Richard Marles was saying that our defence positions haven't really changed. I appreciate the fact that he queried his Chinese counterpart on the buzzing of our Air Force planes, because I think that was a significant issue for Australian defence. They were, concerned about what had happened there. So I think that the government has got, at the moment, they've only been there a few weeks, but I think that the balance at the start seems to be right. Let's talk about what we both need to do to progress both our trade and our defence and other issues to the mutual benefit of both sides.
Yeah, exactly, because it makes eminent sense from the Chinese perspective as well, Simon Banks, when for a whole range of reasons, not the least of which the iron ore set up, but of course students and the flow of students and tourists as well. It's not just a one-way street here in terms of the economic and people-to-people links.
No, I mean, we've got very highly complementary in trade terms economies that can absolutely benefit each other quite significantly. And, I said the trade, embargoes that have been put on by the Chinese are unfair and need to be removed, as much in the Chinese consumers' interest because we supply very high quality goods into the Chinese market that their consumers want. So there's a very good domestic reason why China should rethink these actions as well. But I think we've also seen in, even in recent weeks, I mean, for example, we had the Chinese Foreign Minister down in the Pacific and didn't quite get the reception I think the Chinese thought they were going to get. I think some very swift movement by Penny Wong and the DFAT team to have her out in the region and, sending a sign to those Pacific neighbours that, there is a change in Canberra. We do have a government that's interested in some issues that the Pacific are interested in, including on climate change, but that we're really keen to make sure that we are the partner of choice for our Pacific neighbours. That was a very important message. And as I said, I think the Chinese saw there that maybe they're not quite making the progress that they thought they were going to make.
Kerrychukarovsky, I've got Dennis Richardson joining me a bit later, the former Secretary of Department of Foreign Affairs and Defence and former ASIO chief, and his message is basically that we have to stay vigilant on that front in the Pacific, that while things might smooth out with China in the near term diplomatically, they won't stop pushing and putting pressure on those relations in the Pacific. So Australia must remain vigilant.
Oh, and I think that's absolutely correct. We know that China is not just pushing its agenda in the Pacific, it's doing it across Asia. You know, they're looking to establish whatever they can, whatever advantage that they can. And a lot of those are being done with countries which need the economic strength that China is offering to them. You know, the products that they're offering, the idea that they can help them build ports. And the ports that they're building will only be for the locals? No, not really. Those ports are likely to be used by Chinese naval vessels as well. So I think we need to be vigilant for China across the whole of the world, particularly in our backyard, though, because we do see that they're trying to strengthen a hold there. And as we all know, it's because they need to put those naval ships somewhere. They're looking to build ports in as many parts of the world as they can, and clearly the Pacific and its access to us and then to South America and back up to the States is a key role for them.
Yeah, absolutely.